Once again, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. All protocol observed, I welcome you to this event, which is going to focus on mobilizing contribution towards meeting the AFR100 targets, and simply can retain a word towards a common goal. This evening, the session will be quite more interesting, and I'm excited to be the moderator, obviously, and have a very good panel that will join of experts and quite a diverse team, actually, from government, development partners, private sector, NGOs, and before that then, we'll be having some few opening remarks and keynotes from different people. Definitely to also, for those who were not part of the Africa Partnership, Africa 100 Partnership meeting that closed yesterday at the Intercontinental Hotel in Nairobi, to be able to really grasp where we were and what was more exciting in the room. Without further delay, I would like to welcome Dr. Smith, who is going to give us some opening remarks, and he will be followed by His Excellency Kebede Imam, the State Minister from Ethiopia. Dr. Smith.
Yes, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, welcome once again also from my side. I think I can keep it very short. You are the experts. I don't need to go to the details what really the issues and challenges are. You all know that restoring forest landscapes is not only a matter of environment and climate protection, it is also a key strategy for development in general. Forests and trees are carbon sinks and help preserve soil fertility. They help maintain the water cycle and soil fertility, slow down desertification and protect biodiversity. And trees and forests provide jobs and economic opportunities. In order to support that effort to bring these things together, economy and ecology, and strengthen these benefits, the German Development Ministry launched, together with partners, the AFR100 Initiative, together with our partners at the Global Landscapes Forum in Paris in 2015. Many of you participated in the third annual partner meeting of the AFR100 Initiative that just concluded yesterday after 2 days of rich discussions. And I'm very glad that we have the opportunity today to connect and share some important outcomes with the audience at the Global Landscapes Forum here in Nairobi. But since 2015, when the AFR100 initiative was launched, we have all come a long way. The partnership has been growing continuously, and it is great to see that as of today, we have already 26 countries which have committed to bringing more than 91 million hectares of degraded forests under restoration by 2030. And there are more countries just about to join in and commit themselves to add to this, that we are now already very close to this overall target of 100 million hectares. The bulk of the restoration work will be done by African countries and people on the ground. German development policy, German development cooperation, Corporation is able and willing and proud to support this process. We will definitely not be the drivers of this process, which is, I think, very encouraging to see what is really going on. The commitment, the will behind it. It is in the hand of the African countries, the African stakeholders, the African partners who now have to start to implement it. We are happy to support, if support is needed, to support strengthening partner institutions and developing capacities on local and national levels to achieve these ambitious goals. Now we have the targets in place and the commitment to these targets, and now we have to start the real implementation on the ground. AFR100 is, for me, sustainable development in practice. As Eric Solheim just mentioned in the plenary, the opening session, I could now refer to all the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and I could go into detail how they are linked and how important our efforts are to reach all these goals. In essence, it's about environment and development. It's on people and planet. And to bring that really into reality, that is the real challenge. There is, on the one hand, the sphere of landscapes, of natural resources, of restoration. That is one sphere, one universe. On the other hand, there is this agriculture and food system. And the challenge is really to bring these two universes together in this initiative. The restoration work is able to support the agriculture and food system simply by providing jobs and opportunities for rural communities. But the other way around is even more important. The more productive and healthy the agriculture and food system in a country, a region, a province, at local level is, the more it is likely that we are able in succeeding in our restoration efforts and implement these targets. It will need a mix of international, national, public and private funding to meet the needs of countries to implement their restoration targets. The German government has been supporting partner countries through a variety of projects, as have other international and development partners. Just recently, the Global Environment Facility has also earmarked significant funds to contribute to achieving the international restoration targets, in particular in the context of AFR100. Germany is supporting this approach and looking forward to see implementation of forest landscape restoration targets supported through the GEF funding in a number of African countries. This side event here, co-hosted by the AFR100 partners, provides a unique platform and opportunity for voices from the AFR100 partners to discuss experiences and ideas about how to move forward with forest landscape restoration at the African and the continental scale. I'm looking forward to the contributions and discussions with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Smith, for the opening remarks. And this actually brings me back in a couple of years ago when we were all seeing this movement as some dream, asking questions. Hey, 100 billion is too ambitious. Are we even going to get to 100? I like what you said, Speed, that actually more countries make more commitments. Maybe we need to increase the African target to 100 million. Anyway, let me invite His Excellency to come and give some remarks.
Thank you, Charles, for inviting me to make this keynote speech. Excellencies, dear conference participants, I am deeply honored and privileged to share my thoughts on the mobilizing contribution toward this meeting, the AFR100 targets. Dear colleagues, recent studies show that forest and tree cover continue to decline in tropics. This is particularly true in African dryland areas that cover 43% of the global landscape, land surface, and 75% of the area used for crop and livestock production system. Africa's degraded drylands host about 50% of population and most of the poor people of the continent. Climate change and high level of natural resource degradation negatively affected livelihood of hundreds of millions of Africans and national government efforts of their governments. This shows that urgent need for reducing the rate of forest and land degradation and to work hard to restore degraded landscape so that communities and production system adapt to the impact of climate change and contribute to the global effort of building resilience and mitigating climate change. Global will is increasing towards supporting restoration initiatives as demonstrated by the Bonn Challenge, the New York Declaration on Forest and AFR100 Initiative. Considering the vulnerability of African nations, growing number of African countries have committed themselves to engage in and restore large area of degraded lands. Ethiopia has rich but sometimes challenging history in Africa. One of the challenges facing climate change coupled with land degradation. As a result, the country has been suffering from frequent droughts and poor productivity of degraded landscapes. Therefore, Ethiopia has become one of the leading African countries that is working hard to reduce the impact of climate change and land degradation. Public supported landscape restoration efforts were initiated quite early, and more recently, coordinated grassroots efforts are well underway to respond for pressing environment and economic priorities of the country. Every year, during this last season of agriculture, we are able to mobilize more than 10 million of people for about 40 to 60 days free labor. Yet, increasing population and the need for more annual crop production has continued to aggravate forest loss and land degradation. Recognizing the need to change this trend, the Ethiopian government has made its strategy and subsequent 5 years growth and transformation plan to focus on greener paths. Consequently, Ethiopia aims to restore and conserve 7 million hectares of forest and to rehabilitate 50 million hectares of degraded landscapes by 2030. During the previous growth and transformation plan, Ethiopia has covered substantial area of its degraded lands through restoration initiative. However, further work is required to make this land more productive and maintain the momentum. This major endeavor requires the support of all important actors in landscape restoration. So landscape restoration efforts has been progressing in Ethiopia and other countries. Such initiatives are faced with a number of challenges. One of the challenges globally is limited commitment to achieve the common goal. I commend the initiative taken by the most African countries. I do encourage the rest of African nations to join this global initiative and give momentum to go even beyond 100 million targets set by AFR100. I do hope there will be equivalent commitment in financial and technical support from our global partners. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for the remarks, and I think exactly he mentioned a very interesting point that let's think beyond 100 million. Definitely 100 million we are there in terms of commitment. We can restore it, but maybe more countries need to join the initiative, and we continue. I would like to invite Mr. Bob Kazungu. Bob Kazungu is a senior forestry officer from the Uganda government to join.
It is urgent because when you look at the trend, the global trend in degradation and deforestation and the loss of ecosystems functions for ecosystems and landscapes, we needed this to happen yesterday. And so we need action. And from the African governments, we really need action on the ground, much more than anything. The second message I have is that this whole discussion of forest landscape restoration indeed calls for a multi-sectoral approach. And we've been listening to a number of statements as to restorations actually just beyond trees and forests. These landscapes that we're talking about have a mosaic characteristic. In many countries in Africa, we are agricultural economies. And so most of the land that we have is apparently being utilized for agricultural production. And so we are doing forest landscape restoration. We need to talk to our brothers and sisters in agriculture. We need to talk to our colleagues in the energy sectors. We need to talk to our colleagues in the water sector. We need to talk to our colleagues in infrastructure. We need to talk to our colleagues who are discussing biodiversity-related aspects. Because one of the things that we forget to talk about is below ground and above ground biodiversity in the discussions of restoration. So we're calling for a multi-sectoral approach to tackling these challenges of restoring the degraded lands. Thirdly, resources and money, especially content. And of course, we've been hearing mixed statements from some people that probably money is not just enough. Indeed, but we believe quite strongly from the APM meeting that we had that both public and private financing streams are necessary for us to move forward. I'll just give you a small example from my country, Uganda. I think we've one of the best examples of private sector-led development in plantation establishment in Africa through a program that is providing incentives to private commercial tree growers. But this is actually sort of like a hybrid because government provides part of this funding through land allocations, for example, which could actually be converted into monetary terms. So a mix of both public and private financing is very important. And lastly, the Africa 100 Initiative recognizes the proposal to have the United Nations decade for ecosystem restoration. It's very, very important. You know, when you follow on the discussions for the new declaration on forests in September 2014, and the global discussions that are going on the LDN, the Land Regulation Neutrality discussions, with the UNCCD, and all the global discussions, the Africa 100 Initiative recognizes, particularly a proposal to have a UN decade for ecosystem restoration. Thank you very much.
This is very, very inspiring. Thank you very much, Mr. Bo, for the messages. I think I will not take more time before I invite my brother Elvis Tangel from African Union, the coordinator for the Great Green Wall Initiative, and the African Union to also give some few thoughts on this discussion before I take you to the interactive session.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Charlie. And it's a lot of pleasure to be here again to talk about the AFR100, which we have been talking in the last 2 days, 2-3 days. I think I will just not go into new things, just to repeat the essence of what was said, which was about the need for coordination, the need for synergies, the need for working together, and to put our beneficiaries first, those who we are working for, to put them first. We had a big discussion on coordination and what it means. And I don't think it's the semantics that matter. Call it what? Call it anything. Whether it's coordination, collaboration, harmonization, synergy, as far as we are working together with a common vision, as far as we are working within the framework of our strategic documents, our strategic policies, the SDGs, Agenda 2063, the Rio Conventions, and the various other multilateral environmental agreements and development strategy that we have. As far as we are supporting the interface between science, research, and policy makers that I'm representing. In fact, I don't even like the word interface. Interface is so weak. And last time in ICAF, I said we should replace interface with intercourse. Let us stop talking about interface. It's so weak, it means we just have to meet. We are not supposed to meet, we are supposed to merge science and policy. Because that has been so far one of the weakest things in development for a very long time. And that's why our Paris Agreement was almost messed up, because there was not much intercourse between science and policy makers. So on behalf of the African Union Commission, I will reiterate our commitment to AFR100. It's an African Union baby. It went through the rightful and appropriate political processes. And so it's something we are proud of. And we are actually very proud of the support from the German government, from all our partners here, from our partners from the World Bank, and all who are here in ICAF, and all those who are involved in this, in the organization of GLF and the organization of this IFL. And to say, we are the African Union at the African Union NEPAC. We are open for business. Restoration is getting bigger as a political and a security agenda. So it's more than just like what my brother from Uganda said. It's more than just what we're talking. It's about marketing. It's about livelihood. And as I said before I conclude, while we are talking, we are here working, this is our job. For those living in the Sahel, for those living in the coastal areas, for those living on nature, it is their life. And as I told the youth this morning, it's for them to choose whether it's going to be your job or your life. Thank you very much.
It's up to us to choose. And I totally agree, it's a choice we need to make. It's either we live or we perish. That's especially if we don't make a choice to restore our lands. Definitely, the future is not there. The next session will be quite interactive, as I mentioned, and I still feel like there's a task between scientists to clarify whether we keep the word intercourse or interface between science and policy. But I think what is the reality is that we need to have informed policies, and it's only the science that needs to do that. I would like to invite panelists, and as I mentioned earlier, we have very interesting panelists evening. I would like to start by inviting Philip from the World Bank. I saw him. Philip is a senior natural resource management specialist from the World Bank, and he has many years of experience in the sector. You are welcome, Philip. I'm also happy to invite this evening Wanjira Maathai, our famous ambassador of restoration. I think you can't find Wanjira without, you can't talk about Wanjira without talking about restoration. Definitely, even if you meet on the street, I personally immediately think about trees and restoration and ecosystem services and sustainability. Welcome, Wanjira. The next panelist is Arish Upper from the GEF. Welcome. I have also Miriam Kuzen, who is the Global Coordinator of Assessments and Capacity Development from IUCN. I'm also happy to invite Dr. Chirima Clement. He's the Director of Forestry from the Government of Malawi. And then I have also Elizabeth. I'm sorry, Elizabeth, you need to memorize that organization in Germany. Next year I will speak very right. So the session will run until 17:30 minutes. So we have about 1 hour, and with that 1 hour, let me see, I think I still have one panelist, Mr. Mamadou Diakite. Thank you, Suzanne. I saw Suzanne coming and I immediately thought, definitely, there's something I'm missing. Don't worry, I have got quite a good number of panelists, but actually, what we're talking about is towards a common goal. And towards a common goal means a multiple partnership, a multiple actors, a multiple interest, a multiple ideas, and that's why actually we have a multiple, a diversified panel here in front. I didn't want to be moderating this panel being here because I want to be able to face the panelists. I would like to do that, so allow me to just go down and I will be sitting. definitely, and then start the conversation. Allow me to start by Dr. Sielmann. Definitely, Dr. Sielmann is there for a purpose. He represents a government. A government, I recall a point in what Bob Kazum mentioned, that financing is very important, and it's not only international donor, investment and private, etc., but it's a rather domestic financing solutions. But also, it's not only mobilizing financial resources, it's mobilizing technical, it's mobilizing communities, it's mobilizing political high-level support. Dr. Sielmann, tell us, Malawi just made a commitment a couple of years, I think it's in 2016. How is this towards a common goal interpreted in Malawi?
Thank you very much. The experience in Malawi is that resources for restoration, we can start ourselves. We have public resources that can at least kickstart the process. At times, the problem is priorities. It took a very committed minister, maybe some of you are aware of it, Honorable Bright Saka, to convince his colleagues that we need we need the government support to restore. For him to be convinced, it also took some of us, myself and the rest of the team, that to convince him that, in fact, although government puts priority in sectors which it thinks are of immediate impact, for example, in Malawi, priority has been education, agriculture, and water. We convinced the minister that you must look at the lake. For you to do agriculture, you need water. For you to have water, you need the catchment protected. And slowly we got government commitment. And maybe to cut a long story short, the minister allowed us to pledge to the board challenge. We did that. We were one of the first in the SADC region. We also had the SADC meeting where I invited fellow ministers from the region to convince them that this is a global thing. It's a SADC, it's a regional agenda. And through that, we've got political commitment to the extent that now almost every sector is talking landscape restoration. It is for that reason that this year, government has allocated $7 million to the youth. I know to some extent we are having elections next year, so they want the youth, I think, to be to support the current government. But that money could have gone to other sectors. But because of our having convinced them that this is an important area, government has said that 7 million should go towards the youth, but the youth to be involved in landscape restoration. So I believe that public funds are important. They are there. We just need to convince governments that this is a priority area, it's an important area, and we can start some of these things. We are hoping that we'll get, let me just finish, that we've actually convinced government that this will become like an annual program of the youth. So for the next 5 years, there is commitment that there will be resources. We're hoping that others, donors, the private sector, will join to support this initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sielmann. That's very encouraging. 7 times 5 equals $35 million in the next 5 years in Malawi. That's really something to appreciate, but also appreciating the towards common goal as a government delivers one. And that brings me to exactly Mr. Appel from Jeff. And Jeff, which is a global environmental facility, is one of the financing mechanisms to really address these issues. And it's a pressure that in their 7th replenishment, they have already increased the financing for restoration. Mr. Appel, and it's really good to have you on the panel. What does that mean towards a common goal, mobilizing resources, partnership, technical capacity, high-level political support from governments? What does that mean for Jeff?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, really a pleasure to be invited here to this panel in the very important side event. And yes, indeed, the JEF 7 replenishment has just concluded 2 months ago, and our donors have pledged in total 4.1 billion to the JEF for the next 4 years. And today in my intervention, I would try to be as concrete as possible of what our plans are in JEF 7. And certainly forest landscape restoration will feature very prominently in our programs and also in the focal area strategies. But before I delve into JEF 7, I also wanted to mention that in JEF 6, in the past four years, we have made $300 million available for forest landscape restoration. And these projects are now just starting implementation. So this money is available right now and is flowing right now to the countries. And in fact, 100 million of those 300 went to African countries. We had 17 national projects, and I just checked. Among those 17 countries, there are also 9 countries that are part of the Africa 100. And we really hope that this is already counted towards achieving the targets, and that those countries will make use of the funding right now to take the first steps in fulfilling the targets. And the total targets of those 17 projects are close to 800,000 hectares. So this is a realistic figure, what can be achieved with 100 million. But it also shows how important partnerships are, how important it is to leverage the private sector, and because, like we all know, it's a huge task. Now to JEF 7. In JEF 7, we switch our focus to important landscapes, and especially to in sustainable forest management, to landscapes that have a high potential for generating multiple benefits, the Amazon, the Congo Basin, and drylands. And then we have a very large impact program planned, what we call food systems, land use, and restoration. And this will address production landscapes. And by the way, I like very much the banner that is outside the room, green productive landscapes. That is exactly the idea behind this impact program on how to address in a comprehensive way sustainable land management, taking commodities out of taking the deforestation out of the commodity supply chain, and then also restore landscapes. These are very important for providing ecosystem services. Now, Africa, I think, has a very high potential, especially in this impact program, in several landscapes that are important in this context. For example, we have the commodities like cocoa, like coffee, so we can think about the West African cocoa belt landscape, the East African coffee and restoration landscape. Then in Sahel we have another commodity, beef and dairy production. And then of course in also the what we can call frontier landscapes, where for example palm oil now starts to threaten some of the forest ecosystems, also mainly in West Africa, where I see these are potential landscapes to invest in. But it's also important to understand how the JEF works. So there's a strong country ownership. So countries are in the driver's seat. It's not that we from top down make the decisions. And this is also why we cannot exactly say of how much will be available for landscapes, but we estimate that we want to double our input in GEF 7, so from 300 million to about 600 million, but it could be even more. It depends on the countries, if there's a strong interest by countries, and if countries set their priorities on sustainable landscapes, including restoration, then even more funding can be made available, for example, even through our non-grant instruments that we have also as an additional window to address these issues. So maybe I stop here, but I really hope that during the interactive session you have some more concrete questions that I can answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the very, very informative information. This definitely takes me to Philip from the World Bank for a couple of reasons. One is because the World Bank is one of the investor, or I mean, they have a lot of operations in different countries. And Philip, AFR100 has just achieved 91 million commitments. And I know this means a lot in agriculture, in energy sector, and the other sectors that the bank is supporting. If you could share with us, where do you see the AFR100 within the different operations of the bank?
Okay, first, obviously, and you heard Mrs. Rutenberg at the plenary session on behalf of the World Bank, it's directly consistent with some of the core objectives of the World Bank, the core objectives, including extreme poverty, climate change, and so on. And then another element is when actually AFR100 emerged initially more or less at the same time as the climate agreement in Paris. The framework offers as a challenge and setting, and you mentioned, you used these words in your introduction. I mean, common goal, common target, relatively simple to understand, and it like the Bond Challenge, basically operating like a common banner under which everyone can contribute through its own systems, tools, resources, whether you are at local level or national or international level, whether you are in the public sphere or on the private one, communities. But in a under a relatively simple framework, it's a common objective, and you can mobilize immediately, like actually a bit what Erich just said, the instruments and tools that you have already, that you are already implementing. And we had the illustration of Ethiopia. To some extent, Ethiopia's effort to meet their pledge started before AFR100 was initiated, to some extent. So it offers a simple banner that under which different even initiatives, other frameworks, plans can come. The World Bank also works under for the drylands on the Green Wheel Initiative and Terra Africa and so on, and this can be combined. And it doesn't need a very complicated, complex governance system. What it needs is relatively, in our view, a relatively good tracking system to know and measure our progress, our mutual progress towards achieving these targets, and some consensus on and clarity on the scope of the agenda. For instance, there is a need also for some planning at some point, especially at national level, in terms of turning pledges into plans. But the overall system is relatively can look and can be implemented in a relatively simple way and quickly. So, and actually, the World Bank adopted the target, the 100 million hectare target, as part of its offer or plan under the Paris Agreement for Africa. I mean, the Africa Climate Business Plan, which is a very high-profile document of the World Bank, which is on which the World Bank reports to the convention. It uses that framework. The target is there, and a number of programs were initially upcoming programs were initially identified as contributing to the effort, and indeed, most of them have been approved in terms of financing. Some are under implementation, some others are under relatively late, not late, but preparation is about to conclude. And as a result, you have and something which is not fully captured, in my view, in the exchanges, and what Ulrich just said about the GEF, is that there is already a lot being beyond the pledges. A lot has already been approved and is now under implementation. Okay, the outcome, as we know, will take a bit of time to emerge. But when we speak of Ethiopia, in the case of the World Bank, recently it's a $100 million project that has been approved. Another 100 million is under preparation. These figures actually indicate that we're talking of loans, not just grants, which is a very strong, shows also a strong commitment from the respective countries. We have a very big extension of the new MAP program in Nigeria, for instance, in expanding towards the northern drylands of Nigeria. And we have a number of very substantial projects, programs in Madagascar, Mozambique, Zambia, as I mentioned earlier today, and a project that I follow and supervise particularly is in Burundi, for instance. So a lot is already happening as a result, as contributing to this framework.
Thank you very much, Philippe. I definitely see a reason why this was a very interesting topic towards a common goal. There's a lot happening, and the question, as you mentioned, is how do we track that within and towards a common goal of achieving AFR100 targets. And this actually brings me to when we talk about partnerships and partners, etc. It brings me to another interesting speaker, that's Elizabeth, from an organization called Heinz Sielmann. Definitely I need to learn some German, but that's okay, my daughter is doing that. This towards a common goal. Definitely you have just joined the Africa 100 partnership as a technical partner. We are very happy and we appreciate that, but this mobilizing together, working together, delivering together, what does that mean for your organization?
Thank you, Charles. Yes, it's very difficult to pronounce my foundation's name. It's called Heinz Sielmann. Stiftung means foundation. And probably only Herr Schmitz from BMZ knows him because he was a very famous movie or animal and nature movie filmmaker. Back in the days, he passed away, but he's like the equivalent, or the German equivalent to David Attenborough, the BBC movie maker. So yeah, now I see people knocking, so you know him, but you don't know my founder. But anyhow, so he has a very great impact in Germany when it comes to nature conservancy and restoring landscapes and livelihoods. And that was also one motivation for us in Germany to start also to engage in Africa and in African countries. And we started to work in Ethiopia, but also in Uganda. And so then coming up with the AFR100, it seems like a perfect opportunity for us to join and to work there. And we were very thankful that we became technical partners. Yes. So.
Yeah, I mean, thank you very much for that insight, and definitely it's a very warm welcome to the initiative. We are very happy, and Miriam, being close to Elizabeth, I will come back to Elizabeth in a minute.
Thank you.
And IUCN is one of the organizations, is a technical partner to the AFR100 and the Bond Challenge, obviously. And one of the work you are leading globally, it's a work around assessments and institutional capacity coordination and driving this towards a common goal. And how do you see AFR100 country members using that opportunity to achieve this towards a common goal?
Sorry, your question was how, sorry.
Basically, the question is, how do you see IUCN work in supporting countries that join the AFR100 movement to really achieve and deliver together this goal?
Okay, I was given questions beforehand which were quite in line with that, so I'm going to go with that. I think that, well, we know that IUCN's been very much engaged in countries on the ground. We've been supporting forest landscape restoration activities, probably most notably a lot of the assessment work. I think when we are talking about forest landscape restoration, and common goals as AFR100, but also perhaps in countries, going towards that common goal is really what it's all about. So let's maybe just have a look at the countries level perspective. I think when we're looking, for example, in the assessment that we're doing to identify where, why, what, and how to do forest landscape restorations, we have this methodology. We've been using the Restoration Opportunities Assessment methodology. And that is really all about achieving a common goal in countries, reaching the same page. It's a convening space in countries, building on platforms that are there, information that is there, knowledge that is there. And it's really about understanding the situation and drivers of degradation and creating that theory of change that everybody can get on board of to move towards action on the ground. I think we are still very much at this level where we are looking at preparedness, being ready for, but it's this decision-making process that happens at national levels, but also subnational levels in districts where we're looking at district-level plans. These common goals is actually a thread throughout. Right? It happens at all these different levels. And the assessment processes, connecting policy and science is really about equipping those decision makers that need to make those decisions with the information, the tools, and the knowledge that gathers to do that. So I think this is a little bit what IUCN's be doing. We heard Ulrich speak about Jeff 6 and, for example, the Restoration Initiative, which is in 7 countries here in Africa. We know that out of the 10 child projects for countries, 9 of them are going to be doing exactly such assessment processes because we are searching for that common goal to get behind in the landscape with all these different sectors and actors that are dependent on those landscapes. Just also, to know what are these restoration initiatives, what are our strategies, but also what do we prioritize with limited budgets, what is going to give us the best returns on our investments. Are we actually making sense ecologically, economically, and socially in our opportunity selections?
Thank you very much, Miriam. That's very helpful. In our language, we say that information actually can give you money. When if you don't have information, you don't have data, you don't have knowledge, it's very hard actually to access resources. Thank you for that. And back to Elizabeth. The question is obviously linked to what Miriam just said. you joined the initiative, and we appreciate that. And as I had said, we look forward to engage further. You shared what is happening in Uganda, but obviously it will be good also to share what do you expect and what do you look forward to really bring at this huge 100 million targets. I know I have a couple of people I still need to talk to, and I did that for a purpose.
All right, I'm gonna be quick. I think in the beginning we did not really have an expectation because it's a fairly new initiative, or for us at least, as we just engaged in our international involvement. But being here in Nairobi and meeting all the partners and seeing the commitments of Ethiopia, Uganda, and all the other African countries is just very overwhelming, and it also makes us give us the feedback in Germany that we're doing the right thing, that is good for us to do that and to help restore forest landscapes in Africa. And it's the right way to invest or to donate our money to do that. So that was a very good way. And also like the conversation with all the other technical partners and all the financial ones, it was a very good platform to meet and greet and also to learn, but also to share lessons. Thank you for that.
Thank you very, very much. And definitely in terms of partners and technical partners, and I'm privileged to have Wanjira on the panel. But Wanjira is a special advisor to the World Resource Institute, but I think she has a lot of hearts. She's the ambassador of restoration, but also she leads the Green Belt movement and others among many initiatives, Wanjira, you are involved in. And this discussion, and you have people in the room from governments, from community people, you have international partners like BMZ and Jeff in the room, you have the World Bank. Obviously, you have also in the past seen a change that a movement can create. And I would like you to bring in the room a perspective of creating a movement that goes towards a common goal. What would that movement for AFR100 looks like?
Thank you, Charles. And I must say it has been, the last 2 days have been extremely inspiring. Just to see the momentum that has been created by the commitments which continue to rise. I understand even our 91.4 is now higher. We'll hear from Mamadou. But I think it's a real achievement that the momentum on pledges alone has been so impressive. But I think there's also an anticipation for the next phase, which is creating this, moving from pledges to implementation, which was what the last 2 days was really about. I think that it was today that we had a meeting, and Sean mentioned DeWitt from WRI, that most of the success stories we have today in restoration have not been projects, they've been movements. And I think that is really important, that what we are really creating is a movement. And movements are created by sustained momentum, and we have got to ensure that the partners, and it's really wonderful to see all these technical partners coming around. We talked about information and knowledge that we have had, the tools that are needed is really what we're going to have to leverage going forward. But that the movement be well-resourced, be sustained, that the planning be deep, and that's why some of the tools like Rome and others are so important. And I think for me, the most important of all of them, and the experience of the Greenbelt movement has informed it, and certainly the lessons when I visited Tigray, this is also true there, is the engagement of local communities in the restoration movement, that this is not going to happen. One of the biggest, I guess, wonderful things about this is we have such great political commitment, and that is something I don't want to take for granted. It's not normal that we have such consensus around governments that this is an important thing and this is something we want to prioritize. But I think the next really important thing is just the genuine engagement of local communities, and it's heavy lifting, it's hard. And that we begin, and at least I know for Kenya, I can speak for the 5.1 million hectares, government alone cannot do it. They need to engage the organizations on the ground that are doing the work of mobilizing local communities to restore grasslands, riparian reserves, croplands and forests, creating new forests, and all of those, the mosaic of landscapes that we're talking about. So I think that is, in my mind, the recipe: genuine community engagement, long-term planning, sustaining this wonderful momentum. And I think that's where the work that we're doing at WRI and also with the Global Restoration Council can revive that sense of there are champions out there. We can do this. This is achievable. And look at what we've done in a short time with just these commitments.
Thank you very much, Wanjira. And you saw me just not asking any question to Mamadou for a reason. Mamadou sits in a very interesting structure of the AFR100 movement. He sits and coordinates the secretariats, and secretariats have technical partners and other governance structures. But Mamadou, I want to put you on the spot this evening. After reaching 91.4 million commitments, after hearing to the bank that is mobilizing millions of US dollars, Jeff now doubling, inshallah, the 300 to 600 million, and probably 60% coming to Africa, supporting the AFR100, inshallah again, I don't worry. And listening to what Miriam said, there are tools out there, there are knowledge, there is data. Look at what Elizabeth said, partners are aligned. The government, high-level political support. You saw what Malawi said, internal, domestic public resources are being mobilized and channeled to FRR. The big question to you, Mamadou, is, do we have all what we need to cruise?
Yes, we have it, but we need to go and get it. And this is what we are doing right now, yesterday and tomorrow. I love the shift in language since 3 years that we started this journey. 3 years ago in Paris, in Addis, countries would come and say, where will you find funding now that we are doing our assessments? Where will you find funding to support this hope? Like Wanjira said, this is not normal. It is normal. We need to ride on that what is happening now. Maybe we don't realize it fully because we are in it now. And go and get it, meaning that countries now are seeing that as a partnership, we managed to mobilize not only the political will, the technical support that Miriam summarized here, but now the financing is coming. And how we go get it is building very strong coalitions. We know that there is competition for resources, we don't deny it. But I was talking with partners yesterday. Usually when there are need to access the funding that those financial institutions mentioned, you would see big institutions working on restoration putting different proposals. But now, with this coalition, you barely see individual big institution going to submit proposals. We submit proposals together, and then the donors say, yes, develop a full proposal for funding. We can now mention one first achievement from the German government that is now official that we can mention. In addition to BMZ support since 2015, now we have another Ministry of Germany of Environment putting in place restoration fund for 4 countries that would amount around 20 million euros, and that we will start implementing between now and 2024. and we want to multiply those resource mobilization. Yesterday, if you were at the AFR100, after the closure, we had another coalition meeting with 4 institutions. NEPAD was there, Conservation International, WRI, and Evergreening Global Alliance to set up another coalition. And this is usual, this kind of coalition, to go for resources. But you know what happened? We counted it, Dennis, Alice, and Sean and myself. I think 18 countries came to express that yes, Apple, they will come use their allocation stars to apply. When you say the country ownership, 18 focal points say that they will go get the letter of endorsement of their GEF focal point to apply as a group to under AFR100 umbrella to GEF 7. So this is what I called, we will go and get those resources. And once we get those resources, private sectors, global corporations are giving their agreement in principle to equate $1 to 3. Those kind of schemes, they are ready to get in once countries have shown that they are willing to shift some of their allocations to the restoration. Thank you.
That's very, very interesting, Mamadou. We are ready to go. Let me turn to the audience. I have kept you quiet for long. I would like to give you floor for any other questions, addition, or comment, and I'll receive the first round of 5 people. And please don't give a speech or a keynote, kindly. Just go straight to the point so that we save time. We still have up to 20 minutes, if my watch is correct, and we would like to use this for a real interactive, but also key action point that we could take out of this discussion. 5 first round of interventions. Yes, as you speak, definitely grab your mic and then speak.
Thanks very much. Rosa Roman from C4. This is a question for the panelists, but very specifically to His Excellency, the Minister of Ethiopia. I am thinking on how to move from a pledge into a national legal framework that can go beyond a political shift and that can go beyond donors' commitments and priorities. So how can we transform a pledge into something that is standing by internal finance and that it can be sustained for the minimum time that the restoration project requires, which would be at least 30 years. So how we integrate this momentum into a legal framework that can be related to sustainable development, to climate action, to the RED Plus initiatives and other important legal frameworks. Can Ethiopia maybe give us 3 lessons learned for other countries that are right now trying to move from pledge into national legal frameworks for restoration? On what do you think could be the 3 lessons learned for them, those that are in an earlier stage than you are? Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you. I'm Asafa from Ethiopia, working for World Vision, and happy to hear a lot of promising things, particularly on Africa 100. Common agenda, common goals, that's good. I haven't attended the formal meeting, but I'm asking something which has been asked yesterday, but for the sake of my technical information, or the common goal, common agenda, that's excellent. But in the forestry, there are different countries, they have the different country-specific definition. And also the context, also they vary. So is there any common tracking tool in place, or is there any thought to bring common tracking tool so that it could be very easy to track which country achieved how much by when, and it will give also a big lesson to improve as well as to make some adjustment. Thank you.
Definitely direct your question to Miriam as it speaks to tools and knowledge, yeah? Next, yeah.
Thank you very much. This goes to the last speaker. From your submission, I presume that most of the funding for restoration comes mostly from donations. And I presume that the flow of financial resources for investment in restoration activities in the sub-Saharan region is low. What strategies have you put in place? What strategies have you put in place to enhance the inflow of financial resources to restoration activities, localized strategies to ensure self-sustainability of these projects? Thank you.
Next. I think take the already asked questions starting from His Excellency about lessons from Ethiopia on domesticating these commitments, and then Miriam, and then Mamadou.
Thank you, Charles. Regarding the lessons to share, as all of you know, restoring degraded lands is a huge task. It's demanding very big resources. So one of the lessons is we mobilize our people. First, we convince our farmers, our communities, to restore their areas, to protect their areas. Had not been the community free labor, it's quite difficult to restore millions of hectares. We have a target, 1 million target every year. So had not been this free labor from the community, it's quite difficult to invest from external resource. So this is one of the lessons, mobilizing very big resource. First, convincing farmers to restore their areas. And the farmers has built confidence that they can change the degraded land to productive land. That's the lesson. The other lesson, restoring degraded land is like planting tree to back again. It takes time. Tree growing is a long gestation period crop. And also is demanding very big resource, huge resource. So communities, individuals needs guarantee for the sustainability. That's land tenure issues. So we address the land tenure issue by certifying individuals, communities to their land. So the community, they are confident that they can invest a lot, and they can wait for a long time to get harvest, because they know that the land belongs to them. This is a lesson what we can share for my colleague. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Miriam?
Yes, but maybe even, Charles, you can also add to that, applying, in Africa, the first one to be applying the Bond Challenge Barometer of Progress. But yes, there is such a tracking tool. It's actually at the moment in development. It kicked off just a little over a year ago, and it's been in development. At the Global Landscapes Forum in Bonn, a spotlight report was shared with you all on this. Currently, they have a guidance and the framework for how to track there, and it is estimated that in December or maybe beginning of next year, this tool will go online, right? So then everybody will be able to access that. The tracking of pledges happens at the country level, and it collects different data. So it looks at things such as hectares for sure, but it also looks at very many other things on the restoration. Where is it going to happen? So spatially explicit maps for baselining from which we can depart, but it also looks at policy frameworks, what has changed, institutional aspects. It looks at budget and budget allocation, resources going towards that, jobs created, and for who are these jobs, and what types of jobs are they. So there's a lot of tracking that's happening. It's not all new. Obviously, there are many resources already in countries to start this tracking of progress. looking at things like, if you have done assessments, this will have generated a lot of information that can go into that, but also on NDCs, on Aichi targets, and many other reporting lines on, maybe you have been monitoring on food security, poverty reduction, and others, which will go into these, in this particular barometer. But Charles, maybe you want to add a little bit from Rwanda, I don't know.
I would definitely, as I'm moderating the panel, I want to invite my friend to come and discuss some of those technical matters of context-specific forest-related issues and how you track those. But I would definitely confirm that those discussions have been happening on and again on how do we track these commitments, and definitely I invite you to speak with me about some particular case studies. Mamadou, would you like to comment on the question, and maybe to, before you start, Mamadou, to give you just a hand a little bit. I think I would disagree respectively that restoration is hugely financed by donation.
Yes, this is the interesting thing to be in the same group. So you already answered part of the question. No, this question also is allows to touch to a third possible source of financing restoration. I mentioned the resource, domestic resources. Now many countries have taken the commitment to use national budget, portion of national budget to do restoration for development. The last figure I have in mind is Burkina Faso, which is not a member of AFR100, but in their current 5 years rural development strategy, it is planned to allocate 14% of their national budget to all land, water management, restoration issues, which is a very big commitment. Kenya also took the commitment also to use national resources. So no, the foreign aid is not the only source of supporting restoration. The third one I wanted to mention are local or even community resources. When we say that the new paradigm is to convince smallholder farmers that restoration for development is business. There was a study lastly that shows that the smallholder farmers that constitute up to 80% of the production, agriculture production in Africa, could generate up to $280 billion in terms of revenue if the production was well supported in terms of incubation and transforming, helping to process products and then develop some value chain that are highly income generating possibilities. So the idea is to maybe support the smallholder farmers to be farmers, but also entrepreneurs in the way to move or to combine subsistence farming into also a business with possibility or support to access to market by creating some enabling environments.
Thank you.
Using local resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Mamadou, for that insight. I wonder if from the panel someone want to add, but I had one question more from a colleague out there.
Thanks a lot, Chair. My name is Alexander Müller, coming from a small think tank for sustainability from Germany, and my question goes to Vanshira, and you might not be surprised because you raised the important issue that a lot of progress has been achieved by movements and not by programs, projects, log frames, terms of reference, and whatever we are talking about. I would like to link your comment, and this is the question, to what Stefan Schmitz has presented in the opening ceremony, that the technical issues are not a question. The question is, how do we ensure that people support it, that people benefit from all what we are doing. So in the end, Vanchira, how can we ensure that all these investments we are talking about serve multiple purposes and in the end, the people who really need it? I'm getting a bit nervous when I'm hearing all these technical issues, and I have been a bureaucrat all of my life, but I know that most important is that people support it and implement it, and they are happy and not we are happy here in this room.
Nice to see you. Thank you for that question. But I think just to give a very practical example, I mean, we heard from the Kenya Forest Service, 5.1 million hectares is their commitment, and they've begun to look at what that looks like in terms of what landscapes are these. And of course, they use the ROAD methodology, and so the assessments have been, the restoration opportunities have been assessed and are well established. I think close to 40 million hectares are Kenya's full opportunities for restoration. Our commitment is smaller, is more conservative, just to understand it. But the very first thing, Alexander, that the Kenya Forest Service officer mentioned is he would like to convene the organizations working, small and large, on restoration around the country and ensure that where they have their strengths, where they have their capacities, the Greenbelt movement I can speak for because I know their work, around the Abadeas, around Mount Kenya, if these landscapes overlap with where your strengths are, can we adopt some of these landscapes and begin to, again, plan long-term how these restoration activities will happen? Because for many of these organizations, this is their core work. So I think this will be a shift for many organizations, for many government agencies, including ours at the Kenya Forest Service, of working and engaging genuinely with local organizations that are doing this work on the ground. It is as simple as that. And since I have the microphone and I'm taught you just say everything you need to say, I wanted to mention as well that the tools, the question that was asked about tools, there'll be assessment tools and all sorts of tools. I think one of the most important tools will be a sharing of experiences. And I know that the 100 landscapes which was presented at the AFR100 is one of those, and there are others, that we are able to show what's going on in Niger, what's going on in Kenya, who's doing good bamboo work, who's doing good riparian restoration, and so that we very quickly can share in this digital age what's going on that's great. And of course, the financing, I think on our panel, we heard from Malawi, I mean, real substantial resources over a very short period of time that are being committed from domestic budgets. There's co-funding, and I didn't hear the involvement of private sector. So there's got to be, in-country, multiple sources of financing.
Thank you very, very much, Onjira, and obviously on what you said, we will add what His Excellency Kebede mentioned in Ethiopia. Communities driving restoration, 1 million hectares every year happening. That's communities, they are not paid for it, they are doing it because they know it's for their livelihoods. Thank you very much, my panel. I don't have much time. I would like to invite you to go back to your seats, and I will stay on the, they're here definitely with Mamadou, and then I will tell you what next. Please kindly give a more round of applause to the panelists. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, again. And we are just moving towards the closing of our session. I would recognize that we can't exhaust all the questions, but we are here today, we are here tomorrow. We can continue doing informal exchange about what our discussions was this afternoon. Mamadou, kindly, I would like to invite you to give a closing remarks, and I'd like to congratulate you for continuing to drive, engage, and working with all these partners to achieve a common goal.
Is not this conflict of interest being panelist, defending AFR100 and doing closing remarks? Next time you find someone else. Okay, for a change, I will switch in French so that you francophones doesn't have always to wear the headsets. Encore une fois, Excellence, Mesdames et Messieurs, les participants, à tous ceux qui ont participé dans les 2 derniers jours aussi à la conférence de AFR100 qui s'est tenue ici à Nairobi. C'était une volonté réelle de l'équipe de gestion de AFR100 d'organiser la réunion conjointement avec le GLF. Et on voit le succès que ça a eu et aussi l'efficacité, parce qu'on évite à beaucoup de collègues d'avoir à faire 2 voyages dans l'année. Donc on a aussi économisé beaucoup de carbone, je pense, en faisant les 2 réunions côte à côte. Donc vous avez vu l'engouement que c'est que le mouvement, l'initiative de AFR100 est en train de susciter. Et il y a 3 ans, on avait peur de décevoir les pays africains qui se sont engagés à rejoindre AFR100, à les décevoir de ne pas pouvoir répondre à leurs besoins, que ce soit les besoins en appui technique pour faire l'évaluation de leur opportunité de restauration, que ce soit l'engagement politique que les décideurs ont bien voulu prendre. C'est pour cela que je me plais toujours à rappeler que l'initiative AFR100 est la seule et a la valeur ajoutée d'avoir des engagements fixes et chiffrés. Et ça, c'est des lettres de créance qui sont données par les pays africains à l'Union africaine, au NEPAD et aux partenaires. Donc, appui technique, engagement politique et maintenant le besoin d'appui financier. Et nous sommes en train de voir qu'il y a une convergence pour faire en sorte de ne pas décevoir les pays africains. Notamment, on voit qu'eux-mêmes maintenant, c'était un des reproches qu'on faisait dans la communauté internationale, que les pays africains attendaient trop souvent l'aide extérieure. On a mentionné beaucoup de pays qui se sont décidés à mettre leurs propres ressources. Et je crois qu'il n'y a pas meilleur exemple, meilleure preuve de leur engagement et de leur conviction que la restauration pour le développement, la restauration pour développer les affaires commerciale privée est la meilleure approche à avoir, parce qu'en s'attaquant à la restauration, la réhabilitation, la conservation des ressources naturelles, de la terre, de l'eau, on s'attaque aussi aux problèmes des changements climatiques, aux problèmes de la biodiversité et aux problèmes de la désertification, de la sécheresse. Donc j'aime toujours à finir en disant la restauration, c'est un bon investissement pour l'Afrique. Merci beaucoup.